Today I fucked up by driving naked. Last night I decided to get into my car completely naked. I had one job: meet my GF at her place, drive us back to my place, end of story. No stripping required. However, as the day was coming to an end, the anticipation of spending time alone with my GF was clouding my judgment. All of a sudden I was horny and thinking it would be kind of kinky to show up naked behind the wheel and saying something silly like, "Excuse me, ma'am, did you call an Uber X?" I was rock hard thinking about the risk factor and how my GF would react. I imagined her laughing at the absurdity, but also being somewhat turned on by the nudity. I wasn't too worried about other people catching me because my plan was not to interact with anyone else and to stay in the car until I was back inside my garage. I realized I fucked up the moment I pulled into the parking bay and noticed my GF standing in the rain with an umbrella and her two roommates huddled underneath. All of them were frantically waving at me like, "OMG, please hurry, it's pouring." I had two choices: proceed as planned and accept my fate, or preserve my dignity and leave my GF and her roommates in the rain. I drove my naked ass out of there feeling conflicted as fuck. In my defense, there was never any mention of roommates joining us. My GF called and assumed I didn't see them somehow. I apologized and explained, albeit fearfully, why she just witnessed me drive away without her. I promised I'd be back to pick them up in 30 minutes or less, fully dressed. It was tricky trying to pinpoint if my GF was entertained or annoyed during that phone call. That being said, I couldn't help but feel like I was pushing her buttons when I asked her to lie to her roommates about my reason for fleeing the premises. My GF said it wouldn't be necessary to tell lies because she had me on loudspeaker the entire time. Crickets. I fucking died inside. I could hear the roommates laughing in the background before one of them said, "Tell him to turn around." At that moment, another call came through. Unknown number. My saving grace. Or so I thought. I said goodbye to my GF and discovered it was my mother who didn't realize she was still using her work phone after hours. My mom asked where I was because she just arrived at my place. I said I wasn't home and stressed what a bad time it was for her to pop in unannounced. She said she had leftover lasagna for me, my favorite. I said I'd be home in a few minutes and made it clear that when I arrive, I'm going to drive directly into my garage and open the front door from the inside. I emphasized that she should remain in her car, out of the rain, and under no circumstances should she approach me until she saw me in the house looking decent. My mom approached me as soon as she heard me honk. Her vehicle was blocking my driveway, but instead of getting out of the way so I could access my garage and avoid being seen in the nude, she got out of her car without warning and marched to my car with a plate of lasagna wrapped in tinfoil. I was tempted to drive away again, but I didn't have the balls to abandon both women in my life on the same night in the same way. I rolled down my window and said, "Mother, stop." She did not stop. Not until she realized I was wearing nothing but my seatbelt. I asked her to please move her vehicle and not ask questions. She caught me naked. Of course she asked questions. Lots of questions. I made it sound like it was nothing more than a dumb prank between friends, but my mom was convinced I was under the influence of her nemesis, Satan. I knew what that meant. She was using Satan as a metaphor to describe my GF, which she's done before. Usually I'd bite and we would argue, but I didn't have time to dive into that debate because once I was done getting dressed, I had to leave again. On my way out, my mom proceeded to pray out loud. I froze at the door and had to wait until she was done updating God about yet another classic example of how her son was being tempted by the flesh into committing acts of indecency. As usual, it was over-the-top theatrics and passive-aggressive slut-shaming towards my GF. Somehow all of this was her fault, not mine. I was just a victim of a Jezebel. It took everything in my power not to lose my shit during that prayer. Fast forward to the most uncomfortable car ride of my life. My GF didn't really make conversation or eye contact, other than asking if I didn't mind dropping her roommates at the mall. I could tell she was embarrassed by me. It was my first time meeting her roommates in person, and it was obvious they didn't know how to behave around me. I apologized to all of them for my actions and promised never to leave my house naked again. Not gonna lie, acknowledging what I did made it even more awkward. I got 0 replies, just forced smiles. My GF turned on the radio instead of talking to me. Due to the bad weather, we had one radio station available, a talk station. So there we all were, awkwardly listening to people who suffer from misophonia discuss how disturbing specific sex sounds were to them. Fuck last night.